Juraj, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Pleasure, man. So let's jump straight into it. Monero, adoption on the darknet. Like, what's the significance of darknet adoption to you? What's that? For me, I can only say, it's a leading indicator of providing value under, adversarial circumstances. But what's the significance to you?
I think that it is it shows privacy. I don't like to call it darknet that much because it's just a normal market with voluntary participants. So it's actually the state markets and the regulated markets that are weird. Darknet is basically just people trading among each other. And for that, I think that Monero is like cash. It's the same as if you buy something from, I don't know, from a you go to a portal such as Craigslist, you want to buy something, and you go meet the person, pay cash, get the thing. So with Monero, it's the same thing. No one should basically be interested in how much money you send to who and what you are buying. It's a peer-to-peer exchange. So I think um, that these markets should use definitely a private form of money, and because it's no one else's business.
And what do you think about Bitcoin privacy? So obviously, Bitcoin being the biggest cryptocurrency, got the biggest network effect. Do you think that the privacy solutions like CoinJoins and Lightning can provide enough value to people, not only for like darknet adoption, but just for adoption, like censorship-free adoption, if you know what I mean,
Mhm,
where it's truly
mhm.
censorship resistant?
I think Lightning is actually pretty good. It doesn't only solve the problem with privacy, but also with things like history of coins. So I've been teaching people how to be crypto dealers, and one of the most common questions I get is, okay, I buy Bitcoin from a stranger on a street, and how do I make sure that I don't get tainted coins from whatever marked shady business or marked by Chainalysis companies. And I always tell them, well, first of all, if it's a higher amount, then Monero is better. Otherwise, you would need to do coin joins. There's no way around it, and then you might have some problems with the coins. Um, Problems being, if you want to send it to an exchange or some service, they might refuse the transactions. Um, but also you don't want to wait because the transaction can be mined in 20-30 minutes, so you're standing on a corner probably in winter and suddenly no luck with finding hashes and mining the next block. Even if the fee is high, it can happen that for 30 minutes you don't get a block. So for this, Lightning is good. It solves the problem of tainted coins as well, and it has pretty good privacy. The problem is that you need to think about liquidity. Both sides need to be online, so there are other disadvantages. So, for example, if you are buying something from a party that is not online, maybe putting money into escrow, so things like this, then Monero is much better because it has basically this on-chain experience without the privacy hassle of it. So I don't hate Lightning. I use it quite often. I think it's pretty good, and there are some privacy extensions that are coming. So I think it will be a good option. But there are many use cases where you cannot just give someone your address and then go to sleep and just receive money. And for this, Monero is much better.
Do you think it's scalable to 8 billion people? Like, do you think it's, oh yeah, just that. Do you think it's scalable to 8 billion people? think it's easy enough to use?
I think the new wallets are quite okay and quite usable, quite scalable. You need to prepare to pay some fees for liquidity. But it works. I'm using it with many people. It's like 50-50 Bitcoin Lightning and Monero, and the user experience has gone much better. So in the past, people were using custodial wallets. That is no longer requirement. Actually, they were using custodial wallets or semi-custodial wallets also for Monero. But with Cake Wallet for Monero or Monero.com, which is quite usable on smartphones, and with Phoenix and Breeze, I think the need to give someone keys or not have your keys has gone away. For Monero, it is usually about view keys.
So you touched on it before about chain surveillance companies like Chainalysis, CipherTrace. Like, what threats do you think that they pose to, like, not only crypto but society in general?
Well, first of all, the philosophical background of this is kind of troubling. There is suddenly people think that it's okay to kind of surveil people's transactions, and it's quite weird because even people, especially in Europe, you have hackers who are super hardcore pro privacy. There's a my favorite hackers conference, which is Chaos Communication Congress. It has been going on for 40 years, so it's a very old conference, and they talk about Tor, privacy, and so on. But you still cannot buy ticket for crypto for a hacker conference, which is weird. And of course, there are two reasons. One is that they are kind of not too much. They don't like financial privacy, and I always say that that financial communication is communication too. It is even maybe more sensitive than what you write to your friends. You know, you are buying stuff, so why protect some part of communication and not protect some other part of communication? And of course, the other reason is that it's going to burn the planet, but we don't have to talk about it right now. So back to these chain analysis companies. I think the problem is that it somehow became philosophically okay to kind of be interested in others people's private matters and transactions. There is this, I would say, kind of fake pretext of money laundering. So what is money laundering? Money laundering is an admission of security forces and justice system that they cannot solve some kind of crime, so they have to solve like a supplemental crime instead. So for example, many people know this, Al Capone was not put in jail because he was murdering people. He was not put in jail because he was not respecting the prohibition laws. He was put in jail because of money laundering, and that were one of the first money laundering laws because of Al Capone, because they couldn't put him to jail for the crimes that he actually committed. So what I'm saying, of course, okay, if someone is money laundering money of terrorist organizations or whatever, abducting of children, whatever bad thing in society, I think it is very weird that we are not prosecuting these crimes, and we are putting these people in jail because they whatever sent undocumented wire, or they couldn't whatever declare something and fill some paper. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it is super ineffective. It costs 10 to 100 times more than the actual amount of money laundering discovered. So even though it is a way to kind of catch criminals for something else, even doing this, it's still super ineffective. So that's another problem. And these chain analysis companies, they kind of remove this cash property, this easy exchange property from crypto. So of course, so this is my philosophical problem with it, and then the practical problem is that basically these companies have found a way to become basically mandatory for many businesses. So if you want to run an exchange, a payment gateway, or something like that, you have to demonstrate not actually to the state in many cases, but to your fiat business partner. So for example, if you have an exchange, it's not the state usually that tells you, okay, you have to do chain analysis. It is your banking partner, because if you do exchange, you want to have a bank account where you receive and send fiat. And the bank would say, okay, we can have this relationship with you, but you need to show us what you are doing against money laundering. And they say, oh, we pay Chainalysis or Elliptic or one of these companies. So now they have become mandatory using these network effects, because no bank would talk to an exchange that doesn't do this. So that's quite weird. It is interesting also in regards to Monero, for example, because yeah, they say that they are developing solutions for Monero analysis, but that doesn't work that well. So they actually, I have seen outputs of these chain analysis companies, and it's not very impressive, I have to say. It's like the hype is kind of bigger than what they actually can do, but yeah, they have to sell something, so marketing is usually better than the product. But with Monero, one of the interesting things is that I have a friends who were running a network of ATMs, of crypto ATMs, and they listed Monero. The software supports it; it's not a problem. And one day, their exchange, they do. The exchange basically does some kind of AML and compliance review with these accounts that they know that do things like ATMs. And one day they said, okay, we have a pair with Monero, but since you are doing ATMs without KYC up to 1,000 euros, we cannot allow you to sell Monero in your ATM. So if you want to use us as a backend, you have to remove Monero and Zcash actually. Because we don't want to have problem with our bank. So again, this is an exchange that has Monero pair, so they will gladly sell it to you if you are verified with them. But in this case, it was not allowed, and the reason is not that they hate Monero or something like that. The reason is they will probably have this conversation with their bank, and they will ask, okay, what are you doing against money laundering? And basically the banks regulate things like this. So when we talk about regulations and place of these chain analysis companies within this regulatory framework, what is interesting is that it's usually not the states that actually enforce the harshest regulations. It comes, so at some point it might get standardized and passed as laws. But all these regulations usually start with the network effects of the banking network and of the fiat system.
So just a quick follow-up question, like what are Chainalysis outputs on Monero? Like what are they proving that they can do?
Um, they show you the probability that the transactions are related. So you can say, okay, this transaction has this input as part of the ring. So they can say, okay, with whatever 8% probability, these two could be related. If there's no relation, they can say, okay, it's 0%. Because they were it didn't use that kind of output. And then if you can do this, if you have kind of an overview of the chain, you can say, okay, if we can prove that it was part of or if we can say something about the transaction, we can say maybe this one was not used here but here because we have some additional data. So that's the Sibyl attack. If you can say, okay, 80% of this ring was actually our transaction, if we do an active attack, they can say, okay, probably these are related with higher probability, but that needs an active participant and basically spamming the network with their transactions. So what I do to fight this, it's more of a like a ritual. I like to sync my Monero wallets, and I like to send random amounts to myself. So you're basically mixing your coins more and more. You can also exchange with friends, so it's good to have your wallet synced. So before I travel, I always sync my wallet so I can actually use my Monero. And you can kind of do these kind of transactions, because the more you mix, it's like being part of an coin drone round that is extending the anonymity set. So um, but they can't do much, because with Monero you don't see addresses. So it is like, even the question has to be asked in a specific way. Okay, what is the probability that this input is spent? But how do you actually know that this is the input you're interested in? Because you don't see where it goes to. So that's I think it's more for a show, if you have these, if you are an agency or an exchange, and you are comparing feature set of different chain analysis software, you want to have a tick. Okay, we can analyze Monero. They also say we can analyze Lightning, but in practice, you can't do that much, I think, with it.
So expanding that out a bit, talking about attacks on Monero, attacks on freedom, like where do you see the world heading? Do you think we're heading towards dystopia? And how do you think, I suppose, CBDCs and social credit scores, digital IDs as well, what role do you think they're going to play in the future?
So I look at it. I grew up in a communist country in former Czechoslovakia. So we actually had this kind of, surveillance, total monetary control, and so on. Um, so what was happening back then? Of course, they didn't have the technology that, like, all the spying had to be manual with paper and and stuff like that. But what is happening is that it is not evenly distributed. So if you want to be part of parallel economy, you can use tools like Monero, Tor, anonymization technologies, even cash, and you still can be part of this parallel economy if you want. For many people, they will have total surveillance. They will say, okay, I don't care. Government says they give me central bank digital currency. They say they give me free money if I join in, and so on. And they will just go with it. So I don't like predictions which take form of this is going to happen for everyone. Even in China, there are people who are kind of outside of the system, try to avoid the surveillance as much as they can, and there are people who are like completely surveilled. So for us, it is going to be this way. So the laws, they first of all, they don't apply that well in most cases. So so if you know, we were talking before recording, I was saying that everywhere in the world you can basically buy weed regardless of the legal status. You know, if you go to Amsterdam, you can buy it in a coffee shop, you know, even with a credit card if you want. If you go to Singapore, you can have a big problem, but everywhere you can get it. So when there's a, like, many people do this mistake that they say, okay, they pass law, let's say they outlaw anonymous cryptocurrencies completely, like Monero, and everyone says, okay, now we're screwed, no one's going to do anything. But if you actually look at countries where they actually tried to ban cryptocurrencies, it just moved to peer-to-peer. You had street dealers, you had proxy merchants, you had this market structure that is the same as the market structure of weed dealers or of pot dealers. So so what will happen is, if there is demand for privacy, if there is demand for honest money, then there will be suppliers that will provide gateways that will basically buy stuff for you. In the extreme case, when it's completely banned, there will be people who will go to the store, buy stuff for you, and you pay them in Monero because it has some kind of value for you. So I don't think there's one answer where we headed. Someone is headed into dystopia, someone is headed into utopia, and many people will be in between. And that's just because you cannot regulate markets that well. When there's demand, there is always supply.
A lot of your answers are very interesting, and it begs the question, like, I don't know your in-depth story, for example. So, like, how did you find Monero? Like, what's your crypto story? What are you doing in the space at the moment?
So I started with Bitcoin, as many people, and I studied computer science. So I read the white paper first. I dismissed it. Then when I understood how it works, I said, okay, this is genius. Actually, they solved a really hard computer science problem. I didn't understand if it could work as money, so I contacted my friend Juraj Bednar, who is an economist of Austrian school. I explained it to him for 2 hours. Then he said, wow, that's interesting. It will probably not work, but we will see. Now he's much more optimistic about it. And with basically it started with Bitcoin. Then I was part of this art group that started a place called Paralelní Polis in Prague, which hosts also Institute of Crypto Anarchy. And the basic idea was, me and my friend Pavel Luptak, we were talking about this new crypto money. It was way before Monero. Basically, there was only Bitcoin and some experiments back then, and we were talking, you know, this is the future. This is private money, and we can kind of escape these fiat problems. And the artists, the other artists from the art group say, okay, nice talk, you geeks, but let's see if it actually works, because talking about stuff is fun, but you cannot know if you don't actually try it. So we actually rented this house. It's a 3-story house with cafeteria, co-working space, educational institute, hacker space. There was a 3D printing shop back then, and we said, okay, we are going to only use this kind of money, and we will see if it works, you know. So just to give you, it was 9 years ago, so most people were actually paying with their or maybe not most people, but many people were paying with their laptops, some of them typing the addresses, some of them scanning the QR codes with their webcam from their laptop. So it was like way before mobile wallets and things like that. And then, of course, so Institute of Cryptoanarchy means that we are interested in privacy. We actually were doing workshops about Tor, about how to keep your privacy in many other things. So then Monero came. Monero also solved a different problem for us, which was the problem of fees. Because if you have a cafeteria and someone wants to pay whatever, $5 for coffee or even less than that, and then the on-chain fee is $40, then you have a problem. Either you or the customer, but no one is happy. And of course, Bitcoiners were saying, "Oh, no problem. There will be Lightning in whatever 18 months." And we said, "Okay, that's really nice, but how do people pay for coffee tomorrow? Or today? We cannot wait 18 months for some Lightning. We are running it's a non-profit, but it's a business. It needs income. So." We used Litecoin back then, and then also integrated Monero. Monero had some practical problems. One practical problem was that most people actually bought their first crypto in the ATM. And then try to pay it for coffee, but you cannot spend Monero transaction. You need to wait around 20 minutes for confirmation. So we had to do some things around this. But this was basically it. So Monero was this kind of an upgrade of this idea of Bitcoin with dynamic blocks. They were really thinking about the fees, and it was private, so we were quite excited about it. Not everyone, of course. It's a diverse community, so there are Bitcoin maximalists, but many of us were actually quite excited about it. And then we started to use it in business as well, which is very interesting use case. Not many people talk about it. But if you have especially business to business interactions, it is not such a good idea to show how you are actually spending the money you get from customers. You don't want to kind of reveal your supply chain and what your margins are and so on. So using any kind of cryptocurrency for international business is great, because I don't know if you ever wired money from Europe to Panama, for example.
It's a pain, yeah.
It's total pain. But if you do it with Bitcoin, you are kind of transparent to people you don't want to be transparent to. So using Monero actually makes more sense. Usually the amounts with business to business are higher, so Lightning doesn't work that much, even if you wanted to use Lightning. And also it is good to give accountants the payment confirmations, which you still can get from Monero. With Lightning, there's not such a good record of it that you can have the pre-hash and invoice, which is signed, but Monero is much easier.
And just a last question with a quick answer. What would it mean? What would mean Monero's failed to you? Like, what would need to take place for you to say, okay, Monero's not what I thought it was. Monero's failed, it's been compromised, whatever the case is.
I think the problem is if it kind of changed focus and didn't focus on values. So increasing inflation or kind of breaking the privacy, this would be a big problem. I don't think it depends in any way on regulators or kind of the mainstream society. So for me, it is okay if Monero stays with people who want to use it, with peer-to-peer trades, and with people who actually like these values. That's perfectly fine. I don't think we need mainstream adoption in order for Monero to succeed. But if someone said, okay, let's be more transparent, or let's finance the project by whatever, mining some extra or something like that, some kind of central planning, that would be a real problem.
Man, thanks so much for coming on. You've been great, Juraj. Just from
Thank
our
you.
conversation before, I could tell that you're the real deal. You're like a true cypherpunk. You stand up for the true cypherpunk values. It's great to have you on. There's so many questions that I've got here for you still that we didn't get through, so we'll have to have you on another time. And I really appreciate
Yeah.
your time.
Glad I was on the show. Thank you for inviting me.